I'd like to thank Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Have you started a sampler quilt and now feel overwhelmed? All those blocks, the different shapes, and the different techniques? How do you keep going? Or maybe you haven't even started yet. Here are 8 tips for a better sampler quilt to make blocks that you'll love and help you get to the finish line. So stick with me and I'll show you how to do it. Hi there, I'm Karen Brown of Just Get It Done Quilts. I give you tips, tricks, and strategies to help you make the quilt that you want to make. And if you like what you see, please hit that subscribe button. In my interview with Barbara BRACKMAN, she explained that sampler quilts became popular once newspapers had the technology to print block patterns. They were often published in a series to fuel sales, and quilters from across the country then had access to blocks that had previously been regionalized. Sampler blocks also work well in today's quilt-along format, like Moda Blockheads, and of course Gnome Angel's 100 Days, 100 Blocks. I love sampler blocks as they are all different. They are a great way to play with color, and most of all, they're a great way to improve your sewing skills. So often we look at our 1/4 inch seam and say, close enough. And in many quilts, it is. But in sampler blocks, those errors in the 1/4 inch seam compound themselves as you build the block. A good 1/4 inch seam is a combination of accurate cutting, straight sewing, and a really good ironing technique. And this is the opportunity to really make it work. Be sure you make a couple of tester pieces, measuring after you've pressed and adjusting your guide until that seam is accurate. Check out my videos on accurate cutting, straight sewing, and a really good ironing technique, and you'll be amazed at the difference in your results. The pattern designer has their reason for numbering the blocks the way they do, but that doesn't mean that you need to follow it. If you are a beginner, start with the easy blocks. That is the 4 patches and the ones that are made up of squares and rectangles. And I will go through the pattern and identify them first. That makes it easier for you to perfect your 1/4 inch seam before you work with a bias seam. Then move on to the blocks with the 1/2 square triangles and then onto the flying geese, so that your skills build upon the previous blocks. I have a video on both of those skills, making the perfect 1/2 square triangle and flying geese, and I will link them in the notes below. And what do you do if you're following a quilt along? Just note the block is different. Problem solved. This is your sampler quilt, so you don't need to make them exactly as the pattern says if you don't want to. I often find in every sampler there's at least one block where I go, what were they thinking? It's either too fiddly or I find it completely different from the others. So don't hesitate to make another version of a previous block, or alter the construction to make it easier, or design one of your own if it's more to your taste. It's your quilt. In my Long Time Gone quilt, I completely blew the sizing on 2 blocks. I could have remade it in the right size, but I decided instead to just rework the quilt and put in a block of my own. And you know, when I show that quilt, everyone notices that block first. Another option is just to insert a simple square. This is a great option if you've lost your sojo and you just want to get it done. Or use up some large scale prints that you have in your stash. But it can also be intentional, adding some interesting negative space to your final layout, as in this version of the Kinship Fusion Sampler Quilt. When your block is finished, give it a good press and square it up. And you might find, despite your best efforts, your block is large or small or jaggedy edged. Don't worry, it happens to everyone and it's part of the learning curve. Just take a moment to figure out why, then try to apply a correction to the next block. But you still need to square this one up. If your block is large, just trim it up. Yes, you may lose a point or two, but when the quilt is finished, all will be forgiven. If the block is small, you'll need to make a template of the finished size. Then mark the corners on the back of your block. And I like to mark the sides as well. That way, when you sash, you can align those marks with the 1/4 inch seam and your blocks will turn out square. You are going to be making a wide assortment of blocks. Some will be 4 patches, some will be 9 patches, some will be based on a multiple of 5. Some might be on point, some might be paper pieced, some might be appliqued. So this is a great opportunity to use up some of your scraps. Common colors or fabrics in each of the blocks will tie it all together regardless of the block pattern. For my farmer's wife quilt, I started with a fat quarter bundle called Home for the Harvest. And then I used at least one of those fabrics in every single block. I used a huge assortment of fabrics in a variety of colors and patterns in the quilt, but every block had at least one fabric from that original bundle. We all have our own comfort level when it comes to contrast. Some of us like a lot, some of us not so much. And some of us just sit somewhere in the middle. So when you're making your sample blocks, be aware of that range and try to avoid blocks that lie outside that, because when you get to your final layout, they'll be hard to blend in. Mind you, you can always take that outlier and put it front and center and make it the star of the show, or you can remove it from the mix and use it on the back in your after quilt. Before we get to the last 2 tips, let me tell you about today's sponsor, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community for creatives where millions come together to take the next step on their creative journey. One of my to-do items in the next quarter is to revamp my website. So I'm turning to Skillshare to learn about web design, how to use Wix.com better, and how to take the best photos and write the best copy. Skillshare offers creative and curious people thousands of inspiring classes on this and photography, animation, music, and more. I have been a member of Skillshare for over 3 years now. And what I really like about Skillshare is that the classes include a combination of video lessons and a class project, and most are designed to be completed in 60 minutes a day or less. So they fit into the short blocks of time in your day. Skillshare is also incredibly affordable, especially when compared to in-person classes and workshops. The first 1,000 people who click on the link in my description will receive a 1-month free trial to Skillshare Premium. Our eyes are hot-wired to see yellow first, and in the absence of the yellow, we see the yellow in the oranges and lime greens. So when you do your final layout, pay attention to where your yellows are placed. Do you want them balanced all around the quilt, or do you want them clustered in one area? Or perhaps all in one row? Or maybe you just want to use them to highlight one special block. Our sampler quilts can end up pretty darn large, and sometimes it's not easy to tell the long side from the shorter side. And I'm not going to name names, but some family members don't recognize this difference before they make the bed and may not bother to make it right. So fussy cutting a block or several to indicate the orientation of your quilt may save you remaking the bed. Gnome Angel is absolutely brilliant at this technique. She has a book called The Fussy Cutter's Handbook, and she has now started a YouTube channel where I'm sure this technique will be front and center. I do have the further point, you should know how to sash your blocks well, but I will cover that technique in a future video, so stay tuned. And I'll leave a link in the notes below when I do. If you have any more tips on successful sampler blocks or any questions, please leave them in the comments below. If you want to catch my interview with Barbara BRACKMAN, I'll leave a link down in the notes to that as well. This week on Karen's Quilt Circle, I had Tom Bathgate, the colorblind quilter. And we are talking about the challenges of quilting when you can't see all the colors. You don't want to miss it, so be sure to hit that subscribe button. And if you missed last week's video, my epic 4th of July quilt, I'll leave a link in the notes below to that too. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell beside the subscribe button so that YouTube will notify you when I make new videos. You can also follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest at Just Get It Done Quilts, and of course my website at justgetitdonequilts.com. So take care, and I'll see you next time.